Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's live stream. It's been a while, and I'll explain why in just a moment. But thank you for joining us. If you would like to engage and chat, I think those of you in the live streaming room have found the chat area, so you're very welcome to use that. If you want to ask a question, then please pop that in the Q&A tab, because it just separates it out from the chat, and it means Helen, who's also with us today as well, has a better chance of finding the question too. If you want to hide that small window, you can do so, and that will give you a bit more real estate as well. Okay, so today's subject, we're going to be talking about style brushes, and I've picked that because it's a nice simple subject to kind of get back into it, because it's been a while since we've actually been online. I hate to think when, to be honest, but there's a couple of good reasons for that. The main one is this, actually. If you're subscribed to our newsletter, you might have heard about this today, which is our online certification course. So this is a course which has been somewhat of a labour of love. I think I started working on this probably last December, I would think, and then we had some production in New York happening around May time, and then it was finally sort of soft launched around July, August. But it's fully up and running. You guys are very welcome to sign on. I'll put the link in the chat in a second, or to be honest, if you Google Capture One certification, it comes up straight at the top, so that's probably the easiest way to find it as well. So what it is a course designed to certify you, so you do get a certificate. It's mostly based around studio workflows, so if you're not working in the studio, it might be less interesting. And there's also a strong, if you like, emphasis on working as a digitech. But if you're a photographer and you work alone and you want to kind of get the best out of your Capture One workflow in the studio, you will also find it extremely valid, so don't worry about that too much. It's hosted on a learning management system you can just see down here in the bold here on Thinkific, which is a great platform, but it's fully integrated with your Capture One account, so you don't have to sign up for another account. It all works just via your Capture One account. Everything is laid out in lessons, so you don't have to do it all in one hit. You could spend 1 week doing it, you could spend 3 years doing it if you wanted to, but it's entirely up to you. Okay, so do go ahead and sign up for that and give it a try, and let us know what you think as well. So that's basically why I've been rather busy over the past few months. But let's talk about what we're going to discuss today. So we're going to talk about style brushes. As I said, nice easy subject to get started in. Style brushes are a simple accelerated way to set up a bunch of adjustments on a brush, create a new layer, and get started. So it saves you having to do basically a number of different steps. Now I've made myself a style brush tool tab. If you're not sure how to do that, then all you need to do is click on these 3 dots here and say add a custom tool tab. And then if you do that, you'll end up with a blank tool tab, and then you can simply right click and you can add any tool to that tool tab. So all I've done is basically add the histogram, my layers and mask tool, and the style brushes tool, because when you expand out this particular tool, then you will see it is actually quite big, so it takes up a fair amount of space. So if that was sitting in the adjustments tab, it just prevents a lot of scrolling. So this way we're going to save ourselves a bit of real estate. Oh, Helen's just mentioned one thing. I knew I had something else to mention. So slight tiny segue. Actually, I'll do it at the end. I was just going to talk a little bit about Sequoia. So not to break the flow. So if you're on Mac, I'll mention that at the end about support for Sequoia, because I'm sure there'll be a couple of questions that comes up for that as well. So thanks for the reminder, Helen. Okay, so style brushes, set up a layer, set up the brush, do everything in one action. So let's actually do it with this particular image. So if I grab my crop tool for 1 second. This was shot on a GFX 100, which is why we've got that kind of 4:4 aspect ratio going on. By the way, I've got a few different pictures that we can look at, a few different examples, look at some of the different style brushes, and also how we can integrate it with AI tools as well. So before we do style brushes, let's just do some basic adjustments. So I'm going to brighten this a tiny bit. I'm going to use the brightness slider because I don't want to lose the details in the top of the waves, and brightness will just hold on to the highlights better than using the exposure tool. So let's do that, and I'm going to pull the highlights down a little bit, and I'm going to add myself a little bit of contrast, and also hit the levels auto button here. So I've got some base adjustments in, and it looks slightly wonky. So let's just rotate that a little bit so that kind of wave is straighter. All right, so we've got some base adjustments in. Now I want to attack this in a few different ways. So I'd like to add some clarity here. More about that in a second. I might do a little bit of dodging and burning, and maybe we'll do something else as well, but we shall see. So let's go to my style brushes tool. It's laid out in a couple of different sections. We've got custom style brushes, which are ones you can make, and then we've got built-in style brushes. So we've got color, enhancements, light and contrast. So they're divided up into these 3 different sections. So let's just take a rough example. So I'm going to grab the Contrast Plus style brush down here. So as soon as I tap that, watch what happens to the brush cursor tool here. So if I tap on contrast, immediately my brush cursor tool is selected, and you'll see if I go onto the image, you can see my brush. Same brush that we would use to manually draw a mask. And as soon as I start brushing on the image, you see it immediately makes a new layer with the same name as the style brush, sets up all the adjustments, whatever Contrast Plus does. We'll look at that in a second. And away I go. So now I can start brushing and brushing in that particular adjustment. So right now you can't see my mask, and I prefer it this way because I can watch actively what's happening to the image. But if we want to see our mask, obviously we can click here, or we can hit M on our keyboard. So that's the mask I've drawn. Nice little tip, whilst you're brushing, if you make a mistake, very quickly, rather than going over to the erase brush here, if you hold down your Option key on your keyboard, so Alt, as you might know it, straight away it turns to minus, and then I can brush away if I'm bothered about that little over brushing that I've done. So that's the style brush, nice and easy. Now of course you can take the opacity back a little bit if you want to, and if we just look at before and after, you can see the difference to that particular section. Or if I turn off the layer, you can see before and after, like so. So we've just punched a bit of contrast into that section. Now old style, we would have had to draw up our mask first, go into the adjustments tab and start playing around with the adjustments, set up our brush to what we need to have, which can be a bit time consuming. That's 3 or 4 steps. Now in Contrast Plus, nothing is hit. We've got our 50% slider that's come up. It doesn't do anything else as far as I can remember, but we do have other style brushes which are more complex. Now let's say I wanted to do something a bit different. I wanted to add some clarity, just pure clarity. I'm going to delete this one that we made earlier and delete that style brush, and we're going to remake that. So what if you wanted to make your own style brush? So this could be any combination of any adjustments, all kind of wrapped up into a brush of your choosing. So I'll do a really simple one. I'm just going to make a brush that adds clarity, because that's not in the list here. We've got an add detail brush, which kind of does some of that, but it also does something else, which I'll let you know about afterwards. So if I say make a new layer, and we're going to make a new, we were going to make a new filled adjustment layer. So I want to see the effect of my adjustment. So you can see I've got a filled layer like so. It's by pressing M on my keyboard once again. And I'm going to dial in the adjustment that I want to have. So I'm going to put in X amount of clarity, and you can see as I adjust the slider, we're getting more clarity in the image. Now I'm prepared to push this a little bit stronger than I normally would, because I know when I brush this in, I've got some options on its subtlety, which we'll look at in a second. So I'm going to put in more than I would normally do. And then we're going to go back to style brushes, and we're going to go on, we've got our brush cursor tool selected. I'm going to right click and set up the brush how I want it to have. So I'm going to have this relatively big, nice and soft, and the really important one here is to have a relatively low flow. And what flow means is the rate at which the mask is laid down on the image, if you like. So if you think of the mask as physical paint, this is the best way to describe it. So you've got your paintbrush, in my case it's a pen. Now depending how wet your pen is, so if you get loads of paint on it and start painting a wall, for example, then you would lay down a lot of paint very quickly. If you dipped your brush in, wiped it off, got most of the paint off, and then started painting, the flow of the paint would be much lower. So we're looking at having a nice low flow so we can control the build up of our adjustment. I'm also going to check on brush with layer, and I'm also going to have eraser with brush. And these two things do a very important role. The first one I briefly mentioned, but that means if you start erasing from the same layer, it's going to use the same adjustments on the brush, so you can add and subtract at the same rate, same size of brush. We'll look at that again in a second. And brush with layer means the brush settings are tied to a particular layer. So as you go through your layer stack, what you'll find is that the brush size and settings will change depending on the layer you're on. Again, we'll look at that in a bit more detail. So I'm happy with that. I'm going to go to my style brushes tool, and I'm going to say save style brush, like so. And we've got clarity checked on, that's the only adjustment we made. And we've got our brush settings like so, size, hardness, opacity, flow, and all the eraser settings. So let's save that. And we're going to call it Clarity Plus. Now this could have a number of adjustments in it, as I said, could be a whole combination of different stuff. And let's save that. So now you'll see under custom style brushes, we've got Clarity Plus. So let's delete that layer, grab my Clarity Plus, go onto the image, and in answer to your question, Pavel, do custom brushes create a new layer automatically? Yes, they do. So as soon as I start brushing, see Clarity Plus has been made, like so, and then I can start adding a bit of clarity to my image where I see fit. So if we go over to adjust, you can see clarity is now 85. If we go back and look at the layer itself, and more importantly, look at this one, the grayscale mask, this hides the image and expresses the mask in shades of grayscale. So you can see how much opacity the mask has. So you can see where it's a really faint gray over here, then we're not allowing much adjustment through. Where it's brighter, so if I do like a few wipes here, then it's allowing more of that clarity adjustment to come through, and the effect will be stronger. So the nice way of having this flow control, or the nice thing about it, is that we can have stronger amounts of adjustments where we brush more, and weaker amounts of adjustments where we brush less. So if I wanted a tiny bit of clarity on these sand dunes over here, I could just do 1 or 2 swipes and be happy with that, and I could brush more aggressively over here in the center. So if we turn this layer off, you can see before and after. So just a little subtle change. Checking the questions. I think Helen's grabbed them. Let's see. Just to clarify, there's no fee for certification. It's totally free at the moment. So don't plan to put a fee on it just now. So go ahead and sign up. Is it possible to save a workspace with the style brush list expanded? Annoyingly, I don't think it works. So I'm actually going to mention that again. So if you expand out the style brushes, when you next go to your workspace, they'll actually be collapsed. So that's, I agree, that's pretty frustrating. So I'll mention that again. So otherwise you do have to expand everything out, which is a bit annoying. Okay, last thing I'm going to do, this is a really useful, typical style brush that you'll find, well, hopefully you'll find that you'll use after watching this, is dodge, brighten, or burn, darken. So old darkroom techniques, of course. So if we want to say burn, what I'm going to do is just darken these little bits of the sand dunes a bit. Oh, I just did a shortcut there without thinking about it. So rather than right clicking to change your brush size, what you can do is hold down. You can see here, if I just bring my mouse over here, if you hold down Control and Option and then drag left and right, then it will make the brush smaller or bigger. Now on your live stream transmission, it looks really jerky. For some reason, the way the live stream engine reads the cursor is really smooth most of the time, but when you change the size, it looks really jerky, but it is actually smooth. So Control and Option, and if I drag left and right, that makes the brush bigger and smaller. If I move my pen up and down, that makes the hardness softer or harder, like so. Now if you're on a PC, it's the same thing as Control and Alt, but you have to right click. So if you've got a right click on your mouse, then you have to do that. But it's a really nice speedy way to change brush sizes. But of course, if you prefer, you can just right click and change the brush size. I'll generally do this for this session so you can see what I'm doing. What was I doing? I was going to burn a little bit. So I'm going to make that nice and soft and a bit smaller. We've got our burn style brush checked, and then I'm just going to darken down these little sand dunes a bit. Now it's only a kind of gentle brush, and if I feel it's too much, which it is, I can just back off the opacity a little bit, like so. Same for dodge. I don't think there's anything I would dodge here, but if I just grab dodge, like if we brighten up these areas in front of the beach, like so, similar thing, just a few subtle brush strokes, and away we go. So if we turn those off, you can see they're brighter. If we turn these off, you can see they're darker. Now to do all of that manually is quite labor intensive. So that's setting up the layer, setting up the mask, tweaking the adjustments. Now you've kind of got everything all happening in one hit, which is really good. Cool. I see a question from Abbott, which looks interesting in a second. What I was saying about this one, no I don't, this one, no, go away, this one, the link, brush with layer and eraser with brush. So if I go to, if you look at the size of my brush here on dodge, if I go to clarity, notice now the brush is much bigger. If I go back to dodge, notice the brush is now much smaller. So it links the brush size with the layer. So it means when you're going back through your layer stack, if you then want to add a bit more, or by holding Option, take a little bit away, then you can easily go back and forth and your brush changes size automatically. So that's much easier than trying to adjust it each time. So I would recommend having that setting on. Okay, Abbott's question was, what happens if you reapply a style brush later? For example, apply the brush, then create more layers with other brushes or adjustments, and then decide to reselect the original brush. Do you get a new layer with that brush name, or does it continue? So it will continue on the original layer unless, thanks to Helen who taught me this morning, unless you instruct it otherwise. So if I went back to Clarity Plus, you see it automatically finds that layer. If I went back to Burn, then it goes back to that layer, which is intentional. Now, if you wanted to have, let's say, a different, what should we do? A different clarity one. Let's say you wanted to add some clarity here, but you wanted a different amount or a different opacity, lots of reasons. What you would do is right click and say use on new layer. And now it will say clarity plus 2. So you see it's appended with 1, this time it's 2. So now if I wanted to add a bit of clarity down here, I could do so, have an independent opacity, like so. So you have to force it to make a new layer by right-clicking and saying use on new layer, or it will bounce back to the original one. Black to white on YouTube says, can all of those adjustments be saved as a style? Yes, so if we went to styles and we said save custom style, what you'll see up the top here is all the layers like so. However, note there is a warning triangle. Why do we have a warning triangle? Because in a style, you can only save the layer as a filled layer or an empty layer. Because obviously these clarity plus dodge and so on, this is only applicable to this particular image. So it will save all those layers with the right adjustments, but there will be no mask on those layers. Now if this layer was filled, then it wouldn't have the warning triangle. So yes, you can save a style with layers, but they must be empty or filled. So that's all, okay? So that's why you see those warning triangles. All right, let's move on to a different shot to look at some other style brushes. Again, let's just crop this a little bit like so. Let's take, what are we going to do first? Exposure is pretty good. So we are going to just bump up the contrast a bit, have a bit of brightness. And let's do auto on our levels like so. So we've got a good start point and maybe warm it up ever so slightly. So we've got a good start point, and what did I want to do with this one? Let's look at the test one that I did. Okay, yeah. So let's talk about highlight recovery. So if we look at highlight recovery on this image, because it's a little bit strong down here, I think I can get some detail back in that. Yes, I can, but it kind of makes the sky look muddy and everything else. So I don't really want to do highlight recovery over the whole image. So again, very easy to go and find my highlights recover brush down here. You'll see a shortcut next to it. We'll talk about that towards the end. Once again, I can adjust my brush if I need to. And then with a few kind of subtle strokes like so, I can just pull that highlight recovery in where I need it. So I would always treat an image like this selectively, because just doing a global highlight recovery, or with any adjustment really, sometimes it's not applicable for the whole image. Same on this one for shadow recovery, possibly. If we open up the shadows, not really a benefit on this image because he's kind of right behind all the spray. But if you did want to see a bit more into his wetsuit, as an example, opening up the shadows kind of messes everything else up. So if you wanted to, I don't know if I would on this particular shot, I would go shadows recover, just make this brush a little bit smaller, and then you could just open up the shadows if you wanted to, like so. Now what a really interesting brush here, which works very nicely, is this one, balance cool and balance warm. So this will allow you to selectively warm up or cool down parts of the image. So if we grab balance warm, we know the sun is kind of over here somewhere, like so, shining through the sea, but it looks, you know, a bit on the dull side. So again, if I right click and make this brush a little bit bigger, then I can just paint a bit of extra warmth. It's kind of a bit blue down here, so let's neutralize that a bit. And then we can get a bit more warmth, kind of backlighting in, coming in like so. Now if we turn balance warm off, you'll see before and after like so, or if we bring up the before and after button, see that's made quite a positive difference as well. Just enhancing what's there really, it's not fakery, it's just enhancing what's going on. Would I add a bit of detail here? So let's talk about this one, the add detail enhancements. So this does do clarity plus, but it also puts in a bit of structure. Now I would potentially be a bit worried about putting structure here, because you see there's some motion blur, sometimes structure can exaggerate that a bit too much. So I might want to use this with care, but if we add detail, have a nice large brush, and then in these kind of spray areas, we could probably enhance that a bit and get away with it as well. So if we look here, let's go to 100% actually, and we turn add detail off, or we'd use, let's do this, so we can see it's actually fine. So that'll, if we were to print this, it would print better as well. So we've added a little bit of extra detail, but it's not enhancing too much of the noise or motion blur. So what add detail is doing is similar to Clarity Plus. Let's turn it back on. So you will see it's got 60 points of clarity, 40 of structure. Now that's quite high on structure, so it's probably very rare I would use this at like full flow, full opacity, because 40 structure, if we just put that in on the image layer, let's like so, 40. See, it's relatively aggressive. See, it's getting a bit nasty there for my liking. So 40 is quite high, but generally all these kind of style brush enhancements or style brushes have a low flow by default. So you're not banging in, you know, a very heavy adjustment out of the box kind of thing. Okay, balance warmth, Mark says, what a great effect. Yeah, it looks pretty nice actually. And again, use subtly, it's really nice. Another one which works well subtly is, where are we? Soft flare. So this works well on a really big brush. By the way, the size of the brush is based on pixels. So these are GFX 100 Mark II shots. So the brush size, the default, if you like, on the style brushes might look a bit small. If this was a 20 megapixel camera, then they would look much bigger. So you might find that the default or the built-in style brushes are either too big or too small, or just about right. I think we aimed it for kind of middle of the road, knowing that not everyone has 100 megapixel cameras. But for a Fuji user, I might kind of recreate my most favorite ones to bigger sizes. So this was soft flare. So what we do here, I'm going to turn on this button here because this gives me a border around the image. So this is handy if you want to get into the corner of something a bit better. And then just a bit of subtle brushing. What it does is just add like a little bit of sun flare kind of thing. I generally find it looks better if you knock the opacity back a little bit. So if you just want to subtly brighten a corner like so, you can do so. And I think it's just this wacky looking curve. You can see the curve is up here like so. So that's like a nice little adjustment too. All right, just have a little check for questions. What's the difference between clarity and structure? Oh, good question. Someone said I'm not seeing any questions in the Q&A section. That's because I'm out of practice and I didn't set the questions to be visible. So I'm going to do that now. Sorry about that, Mark. The difference between clarity and structure is clarity is a kind of a contrast adjustment, but if you think of it in terms of the histogram, so when you adjust clarity, it improves contrast, but it's only in the midtones, kind of the center of the histogram. So it stops the shadows getting too dark and it stops the highlights getting too bright. So it means on an image like, let's go back to this one, if we put in loads of contrast, then you see this gets nasty and dark too quickly. If we put in more clarity, then you see I can push that much harder and my shadows are relatively less affected. Now structure is really a tool that is designed to enhance existing details. It won't, for want of a better expression, polish a turd, as we say. So if you don't have any detail in your image, it's not going to magically make up detail. But from an image like this, which we're going to look at in a second, where we can use structure, you'll see it will enhance what is already a very good detail. So clarity, if we really simplify it, mid-tone contrast, structure, enhancing details which exist in the picture, like animal fur, architectural details, grass in this image which we'll look at. I wouldn't use it on skin because it will prematurely age someone quite badly. So yeah, use it with caution, and you don't need a lot of it to have a good effect. So before and after, like so. Okay, so now we are going to talk about using style brushes, or when to kind of combine it with AI masking as well. So if we take this example, we've got a nice high key product image. If we were to think, oh, I'd love to get maybe a bit more highlights back in this area, just kind of around here, then we could say, okay, I'm going to pull back my highlights, which kind of works, but it makes the rest of the image dull again. So we don't want to do that. Now you might be thinking, oh yeah, I love Capture One's new AI masking, which I hope you do. Let's zoom in a bit. And you might be tempted to use the latest new shiny toys. So if I go to the AI mask and just hover on the bag and click that, then we're going to get our AI mask. Now if I pull down my highlights, just kind of makes the whole bag a bit dull really. So then I might think, not to worry, I'm going to use the AI select. So I'm going to draw a box around this bit of the bag, which is where I want to target my highlight recovery, right here. And now I'm going to pull my highlights down. Actually, that looks kind of bad as well. So I don't like that. So AI masking, whilst extremely fast and accurate in those cases, visually might not look the best. So again, if I just go ahead and grab the highlights recover brush, where is my brush? It's probably enormous. There we go. Make sure that's nice and soft. And then with a few kind of subtle brushes like so, make sure I didn't get the background, then I can recover just enough of the highlights, but it doesn't look fake. So a lot of the time, precise masks don't do you any favors. It looks too obvious. So I would much rather have something nice and subtle looking than what you saw before. So sometimes an accurate mask makes sense, sometimes it really doesn't. Okay, Doug was saying, in a session, how do you keep your adjusted style brush settings as you move from one image to another? Yeah, create a custom style brush. If you want that consistency, just make a custom style brush, and then as you move through different images, then you will see those as well. Okay, let's see. Martin is saying, are you saying that structure is actually micro contrast? Yeah, it is actually. I guess at a very micro level, structure is also adding contrast, but at, you know, a much more focused, concentrated level. But I think just treat it as, okay, this is going to enhance a really nice image, which already has good details. It's just going to make it even better. On the subject of, we've been talking about brushing and so forth. For those of you that are interested, I use a pen and a tablet. I find it just a lot more comfortable because when you're working on, you know, an image like so, if you're like brushing areas, masking, oops, I just moved my live stream screen a bit. If you're brushing areas, you know, dodging and burning, I just find it a lot easier to hold a pen as opposed to trying to do the same with a mouse, especially if you're doing lots of small movements. This, interestingly, is a product made by Xence Labs. You might just be able to read the logo, Xence. It's the first time I've really used it in anger. I thought it would be a good time to wheel it out. Generally, I've been using my Wacom, which has also worked great. It's just getting a bit old and beaten up. You can see the area that gets used most with all the pen marks. So this is a Wacom Intuos Pro Medium, which has worked very nicely and flawlessly. This, yeah, different manufacturer by Xence Labs. Has a very nice build quality, feels super solid, I have to say. Nice pen. Comes with a little case like so, which has the fat pen and the skinny pen, which I'm not so comfortable with, but probably purely because I'm used to the Wacom pen, which is kind of a similar size as the Zenslabs one. Excuse me. But yeah, extremely nicely made. It also has this little thingy here. Sorry, I don't know the technical term, Zenslabs. Let's just actually look on the software. My quick keys, there you go, which is all highly configurable. My quick keys, all highly configurable, and allows you to put shortcuts on the bottom, and you've got a spinny wheel for zooming and brush size and that kind of stuff. So I haven't used that in Anger yet. It's just like a little co-pilot which kind of acts like a keyboard. I did program something for fun on it, which we'll look at a bit later. But yeah, it's a really nice alternative to Wacom as well. So, but regardless, you don't have to spend a bunch of money on the nicest Zenslabs or the nicest Wacom. Even the base model of either, I feel, are much better than using a mouse. I also find for long periods of working on a computer, I find it more comfortable. Like, I never pick up a mouse. I'm always working with a pen. If I'm video editing, writing emails, doesn't matter. I'm using a tablet. I just find it better. Okay, so enough on tablets for a second. What were we going to talk about? Oh, we were going to look at this image and talk about AI masks as well. So let's just do a little bit of a crop like so. Exposure is pretty good. This is from our friend of the house, Paul Reefer, who I'm sure you know well. I'm not going to do a full edit. I'll just chuck in a bit of clarity. He'll be shaking his head at me, not treating his image with respect. But let's say I've just done a few tweaks like so. With regards to structure, look at this, super nice and sharp, loads of detail. So I know I can add in some structure and that will only make it look better. So if you see before adjustments, after. So here in the grass, here in the rocks on the face of the mountain, I would be careful that it wasn't doing anything to the sea I didn't like. Over here, so we've got a few buildings, everything looks good. So with a super sharp, high quality image, you can afford to plow in the structure a little bit more without any fear. So what I'm going to talk about here is the nice style brush, which is called Deep Sky. So Deep Sky does a number of things. It's got a lot of adjustments piled into one brush. So if I just brush here a little bit, then you'll see it's making the clouds look a bit stand out better, a bit more detail and contrast and so on. But to try and use it proactively on this image is difficult because I'm not going to be able to, or I don't want to try and paint accurately around, you know, a mountain range like this. That would be super annoying. And of course it's now bled into the edge and it looks a bit crap. So the easiest thing to do if you want to accurately use a style brush in a non-sloppy way. So all we need to do is draw just a little bit of the mask, one blob somewhere, doesn't matter. Grab our AI select brush, hover over onto the image, click once, and in a couple of seconds, there we go, we've got our mask. Oops, wrong button. So there's our mask, like so, and it's using the Deep Sky because all we've done is change the mask on that layer. All the adjustments have been as normal before. So if we turn off Deep Sky, you can see without Deep Sky and with Deep Sky. Don't worry if you can see some posterization, doesn't exist when we zoom into 100%. For some reason at this zoom level, you can see a little bit, but it doesn't actually exist when we get to a decent zoom level. Same goes for, let's say, teeth whitening. So that's another useful style brush. So typically what you would have to do before is grab whiten teeth, get a little tiny brush, and then start, you know, drawing over the teeth. And then if you strayed into a similar skin tone, you might have a little bit of a problem. But all I can do now is grab my whitened teeth, make that nice and small, just do one of them, or again, just put a little mark somewhere. Grab the AI select brush. I'm going to draw a mask just on the teeth like so, and might as well get all of it like so, and then job done. So now we've done our whitened teeth, nice and easy. So before you would have had to, do a little bit more brushwork. Now you can just use it in combination with an AI mask as well, which helps. Let's see, checking your questions. Yeah, Mark says, did the AI mask maintain the additional brush softness on your sky mountain range edge? No, it wouldn't have done. So the AI mask would have replaced that softness. So if we look at our grayscale mask, then you can see that's what it looks like. But don't forget, like any layer, if you want to, you can refine it. So if we hit refine mask and then bang that slider up to 300, you'll see it's working. This is 150 megapixels, so it's got a little bit more to do. So you can see, if I just cancel that for a second and come over here, you'll see what it's doing is just bleeding that mask, or where the cutoff from mask to no mask is, it will just, with a bigger radius, soften the roll off like so. So if you wanted to have it a little bit softer, you could do so. A AI mask has some refinement by default, but that way, if you wanted to do it, you could do. Another thing you could do with this, so we've still got our deep sky adjustment, right? Take a gradient mask. Let's do right click and clear the mask. So we've still got the adjustments, but no mask. If I put in a gradient mask like so, then that does a similar thing, and then we would have a mask that's just falling off. So giving us our deep sky effect, but not having that kind of hard edge. Actually looks quite nice on the mountain tops. We might be able to, this probably isn't going to work, but if we turned on Luma range as well as that, let's see, would we be able to cut out the foreground? Yeah, probably not. So, but to me, that actually looks quite nice with that subtle fall off anyway. So you've got some choices, but refining it is always a good move if you just want to soften that edge a little bit. All right, how are we doing for time? About done pretty much. I think I covered everything that I wanted to talk about. Oh, last thing was shortcuts. So you'll see here, what should we go back to? Let's grab this one for a second. Oh yeah, this one I was going to use, where is it? Saturation minus. So if we look at this bag, it's just got a little bit of color mottling around here, which might be distracting because of the hard lighting. So if I make my brush a bit bigger and just do a little bit of desaturation minus, then if we look at our bag, we turn that off and it just takes some of that color spill, I guess. Again, this would be a place where I wouldn't use structure, because even though it has lots of detail and you think, oh, maybe this will look better, if we add some structure, see, it just makes that highlight look aggressive and nasty. So that's a place where I wouldn't use it. Maybe I would carefully around the edges a bit, or if there was like a logo or something like that, but not on the whole image. Ratis, maybe you missed that. You can cut it. You can cut out same easily with AI mask. Just deselect mask from mountain. Yeah, we could do that as well, which is kind of what we did earlier. So shortcut. Let's say you wanted to have a shortcut for our new Clarity Plus brush. So this was a feature we added a while ago, but you might have missed it. So under keyboard shortcuts, you'll find here a new section called custom shortcuts. So if I hit on plus, I can choose up to 5 different commands. So adding a style, selecting a style brush, opening an edit with, and an aspect ratio. So let's delete the one I've already done. So I'm going to select the style brush. I'm going to choose my Clarity Plus like so, and then I'm going to hit my keyboard shortcuts. So let's do Shift Command 7. That hasn't been used. And then let's just go to this image again. So now if I use my keyboard shortcut, Shift Command, Shift Command 7, I think I said, like so. You see it's selected clarity plus. The brush, like so, is also selected. So now if I want to, I can add a bit of clarity into the foreground, like so. So that's just a faster way of doing it. And going back to this guy, the ZenSlab guy, you can also add shortcuts as well. So as an example, I added, let's just make a, reset that. So if I wanted to just add a style, so if we look at our edit keyboard shortcuts, under custom shortcuts, I've got apply style as Shift Command 6, and that adds F200. And I've told this little commander to just use that shortcut. So if I press that, then it adds that style. So if I just undo, click this button, then it adds that style. So those of you who've watched live streams before will hear me talk about the Stream Deck, which is an Elgato product. I use it to switch scenes, like turning stuff on and off. It's just basically a bank of buttons, which is just in front of me. I can't show you because the cable isn't long enough, I don't think. Hang on, let's go. Oh, there you go. You can just about see it. So this is a Stream Deck with buttons, which you can also set up similar to this. So I could set up a button here which would apply a style, apply a style brush, custom shortcut, and so on. So that's also a really handy tool to have on your desk if you like gadgets, which I certainly do. All right, I think that was about it. Now, what Helen reminded me to talk about at the start, which I forgot, and I see there was a question here from Andreas: does the current version support Mac OS operating systems 14.7 and 15? So with regards to, where's my button? This one, Sequoia. So this is 15.0. Don't update yet. You've survived without Sequoia for the past year, so you can survive a bit longer, is my opinion. So we're in the final stages of testing. Yes, we've had Sequoia for a while because of the beta releases, but the beta release doesn't always behave as the final release. So to give you an example, I can't remember what it was. It might have been Big Sur, I think. Beta release was working fine. As soon as the actual release hit, it completely broke tethering. So there isn't always a parity between the last beta, or Golden Master, whatever they call it now, and the final released one. So if you have a Mac, don't update to Sequoia. You have the option to not do it automatically. We interestingly had a support email the other day saying our Macs have all automatically updated to Sequoia because you had the automatic update turned on. So if you're worried about any automatic updates, just check in your system prefs that you're only getting security updates, not a full-blown OS. So at the end of this September, we will give you an update on the current state of support. But for now, don't update. If you're desperate to, then obviously you can, but I wouldn't recommend it. I normally wait 3 months because all of the production apps I use, like how we're doing this to live stream, don't have immediate support. And if they do, there's generally some little hiccup or something like that. Or your printer driver doesn't work, or audio drivers don't work, or something like that. So I always on the side of caution because I don't want to break my production machine for the sake of updating to a new OS. So if you can, hold off. Let's just check your last questions. Josh says, what's that control on the left of your keyboard? You must have missed that bit, Josh. So this is paired with the ZenSlabs tablet. So XENCE, so ZenSlabs. And this is their kind of quick keys that goes with it. It's just plugged in as well. You can program shortcut buttons. You've also got the ability, I don't know if I set it up. What do I have this set to? Scroll, rotate, brush size, zoom. So for example, if I spin this wheel, then it will also zoom in the image as well, or you can set it for brush size. I haven't looked that deep into it. But I'm so used to using a keyboard and my Stream Deck, I might find it hard to transition to this. But if you've never used keyboard shortcuts or you haven't used a Stream Deck, then this little guide could be quite interesting actually. So the issue I had with Wacom personally is their shortcut keys are down the left hand side, and I don't find that very ergonomic because I want my hand here. I kind of don't want it squished up next to me. That's not comfortable to sit. I've got my elbow on the desk and my hand on the keyboard, which can cover Control, Option, Out, Spacebar, Tab, and so forth. So as good intentioned as this is, ergonomically it doesn't work for me. So I think it's quite nice that it's separate. As for tablet size, if you're an illustrator, I think go big because it's nice having detail. But for photography, unless you're doing like very specific retouching where you really need to noodle in to find details, I think having too big a tablet means bigger arm movements and you get more fatigue, shoulder fatigue or whatever. I find these more comfortable than a mouse anyway, but this kind of size, which is A4 piece of paper, if I grab an A4 piece of paper, roughly the size of an A4 piece of paper. So I think that's plenty big enough. You could get away with smaller as well, to be honest. The Wacom is also a similar size as well. You can see how scratched up it is, just from, not because it's a bad product, because it's been very well used and has been in my hands for easily 5-6 years now, I would say. But about the size of an A4 piece of paper. I don't think you need bigger than that. Even smaller would work as well. Learning curve, interesting. You will probably hate it for a week and be annoyed that I ever suggested you buy such a thing. And then after that, I don't think you would personally look back, I would say. But you have to be prepared to kind of get used to the difference being that you're not, like with a mouse, you're kind of pushing the cursor around the screen, if that makes sense. With a pen, where you place the pen is where the cursor is. So if I'm top right on my tablet, it'll be on the other screen. So if I'm top right on my tablet, I'm top left on my tablet, I'm top left on the screen. If I'm down here, then the mouse is down here. So you're kind of wherever your hand is, wherever the cursor is. And you will get really quick at just intuitively putting your cursor. Like I don't even have to think about, okay, I want to go to the export tab, click. I'm not like looking at my pen like an idiot or kind of gradually making my way over there. You arrive at your desired point instantly. So I find it much better, but we're all different, so you might hate it. So don't blame me if you don't like it. Pavel says, I use a small Wacom, the size is okay. I totally agree. You don't need a massive one. Let's see. I think that's it. Okay. Nice one. All right. So thanks for joining me today. I would encourage you to either scan this QR code or go to bit.ly/capture on live streams. Ignore the fact it says November behind there. It's just a little bit out of date. The current page looks like this, and there's another one coming up on October 3rd. There's more coming up in October as well. 2 more to be precise, but they're just not there. And we're talking about some of those less than obvious features. Custom shortcuts is a very good example of that you might not know about. So kind of looking at some of those things that are really useful but less obvious in the interface. Okay, so I'll just put that back up again. So thanks for joining me today. Sorry it's been a while. I hope that was useful. This went straight to YouTube, so if you missed any of it, you can go straight over to the YouTube channel now and you can watch it again from the beginning if you wish. Our YouTube channel is easy to find, Capture One, like so. Oh, speaking of YouTube, thanks everyone. We got this. So this is it probably won't focus. This is a framed play button, I guess, with a mirror on it for 100,000 subscribers. So thanks to you guys for subscribing, because it now means I get to hang this on the wall as well. So thank you very much for your dedication and putting up with listening to us. Thanks again to Helen for answering a bunch of questions as usual, and see you all again soon, hopefully on October 3rd. Take care. Bye now.